Imagine taking a shower in your brand new home when suddenly the water pressure drops. You glance at the wall and hear it, your neighbor's water pump roaring to life. At first you think, maybe it's just coincidence. But what if I told you that your neighbor was secretly siphoning your water, leaching off your property, and laughing about it behind your back? Well, I didn't just sit back and let it happen. I decided to teach him a lesson that would leave him broke, humiliated, and forced out of his own home. If you've ever dealt with a selfish neighbor, a greedy landlord, or anyone who thought they could take advantage of you, then you'll love this story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around, because today, you're about to hear one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll ever come across. I had just bought a house in Asia's capital city. On paper, it was a dream deal. Great price, central location, and family friends had been the previous owners. But there was a catch. It was a fixer-upper. The front door, locked with just a padlock. No gate, no security, abandoned for years. The very first day I moved in, I walked into my new garage and found a stranger's motorbike parked inside. That was my welcome gift from the neighborhood. I didn't waste time. I shoved the bike out on the road and immediately installed a gate. Later that day, some furious man pounded on my new gate, demanding his bike back. I didn't even answer, just watched from my window as he finally gave up and wheeled it away. At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. Something told me this wasn't going to be the easiest place to live. After a few weeks, small annoyances popped up. People blocking my gate, assuming the property was still abandoned. Nothing a no parking sign couldn't fix. But the real nightmare started in the most ordinary way possible. I was in the shower, and suddenly, the water pressure dropped. At the same time, I heard a loud whir from next door. My neighbor's water pump. Now let me tell you about this neighbor. He was an older man, a retired mechanic, living on the bottom floor of a 3-story building. He rented out the other 2 floors to tenants, and he hated me. He hated that I bought this house. He had complained to the previous owners, saying it shouldn't have been sold. He thought of it as his territory, but I wasn't exactly easy to intimidate. I'm 6 feet tall with 3 dogs. He knew better than to try anything directly. But this was different. At first, I brushed it off. Coincidence, right? Pumps turn on, pressure fluctuates, but the nagging feeling wouldn't leave me. So I ran a little experiment. I waited until his pump stopped. Then I turned on my taps. Boom. Water pressure, perfectly fine. Next time his pump started, my water pressure dropped like a rock. That's when it clicked. This man wasn't just a cranky neighbor. He was stealing my water. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces fit. The inflated bills over the years when no one even lived in this house. The weird, unexplained usage. The fact that he had unfettered access to my property when it sat abandoned for years. He must have tapped directly into my lines. And I cannot explain the feeling of violation that comes when someone steals the most basic necessity, water, from your own home. Now, water in my country is cheap. My bill with 3 dogs, a car wash every week, and a garden, barely $5 a month, even with his theft. So why did this bother me so much? Because it wasn't about money, it was about respect. Here was this entitled old man, stealing from me just because he thought he could. Because for 3 years this house was empty and he got away with it. Because he saw me as some outsider he could exploit, and I could not let that stand. But I didn't want to break the law. I didn't want to storm into his house or mess with his property. No, if he wanted to steal from me, I'd use his own greed against him. My plan was deceptively simple. Every time his pump turned on, I'd shut off my water supply from the mains. Here's why that matters. The pump in his house was connected to a tank on the roof. Normally, when the tank runs low, a ball valve signals the pump to turn on. Once the water fills, the valve shuts and the pump turns off. But what happens if no water's coming in? The pump just keeps running, and running, and running. Pumps aren't designed to work dry. Without water, they overheat, break down, sometimes even worse. So one late Monday night, when I heard his pump flicker to life, I walked outside, calmly, silently. and with a flick of my wrist, I shut off my mains. Then I waited. I expected to fry his pump, maybe annoy his tenants. What I didn't expect was how much worse it would get. See, his house still had 90s-era wiring, ancient, fragile. That pump, running endlessly through the night, began drawing power nonstop. The fuses couldn't take it. By 3 a.m., his entire house went dark. No power, no water. I sat in bed listening through the walls. Murmurs at first, then louder voices, then full-blown shouting matches between the old landlord and his furious tenants. And oh, it was music to my ears. Tenant laws here are strict. Power and water aren't luxuries. They're essentials. Denying them is practically criminal. By morning, one tenant had already packed up and left. The other? Straight to the police station. Complaints filed. The law doesn't play around with landlords who neglect basic services. Within days, fines stacked up. $500 minimum, which here is a serious chunk of cash. On top of that, both tenants demanded their deposits back, and until the wiring and water supply were fixed, he was legally barred from renting those units again. His only source of income? Gone. Eventually, the old man shuffled up to my gate. He asked straight-faced, "Did you turn off your water?" I met his eyes, calm, steady, and said, "Oh yeah, I had a leak in my tank. Shut it off until the plumber fixed it." He just stared at me, face frozen, lips pressed tight, like he was swallowing glass. He knew. I knew. We both knew. But there was nothing he could do. Now, the once proud landlord is packing up his bags, moving in with his daughter because he can't afford to live alone anymore. His tenants gone, his reputation shattered, his pockets lighter than ever. And me? I'm finally calling in a plumber to seal every single pipe leaving my property, permanently. All it took was flicking a single valve. 2 birds, 1 stone, justice served. The man who thought he could steal from me, who laughed at my expense, who thought he could get away with it, ended up losing everything. And I didn't even have to lift a finger, just a flick of a tap. You know, sometimes karma doesn't come on its own. Sometimes you have to give it a little nudge. And in this case, justice wasn't just satisfying, it was poetic. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the worst thing your neighbor has ever done? And of course, subscribe for more of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear.